Hello, everybody. Welcome to the lounge. Hope you're all doing well. And before we dive into the topic of the day, let's do a little catch up on the last episode, the Roblox trade. So, for those who were paying attention to what I said, I was going to buy Roblox if the market cap was at a certain level. As it turned out, the opening bell rang and the market cap of Roblox was just ridiculously high, way, way, way higher than the $7 to $10 billion level that I indicated in that episode. So I did not buy any Roblox. Instead, it goes up on my watch list, and hopefully it'll get cheaper as time goes on. That is how it goes sometimes. Technically, that Roblox airing on the markets was a DPO, a direct public offering, and historically in the past year, some of the high profile DPOs did open a little bit high and then over several months got cheaper. So keep an eye on that. But yeah, I didn't act on it because of how expensive it was. And the other thing that's going on is that I've sold my house that I have for sale right now, the one that I'm in at the moment, and I'm currently working on getting the next house. I'd really like to do some interesting stuff in the next one, chicken coop, greenhouse, lots and lots of garden beds, all sorts of stuff. So I gotta be a little bit picky on the next one, but I'll keep you guys posted. And of course, I will do the tour once I get into the new place. But okay, the topic of the day is vaccines, and there's an awful lot of stuff to talk about in the context of COVID and all that. But today's topic will just be specifically the vaccines and should you get them and am I getting them? So I actually happen to care quite a bit about the subject of vaccines. There's not nearly enough nuance in vaccine discussion. And back when I first had a kid, I had to figure out, do I want him to be vaccinated? Do I want him to get all the vaccines? Do I want him to go by the normal immunization schedule? And me and my wife, who's, again, for those who don't watch normally, way more qualified than I am to do this kind of research, we went through it and we learned quite a bit in the process. And the end result of that was that my kid did end up getting most, but not all, of his vaccines, simply because the risk to benefit ratio was not the same for all of them, particularly for a child. And when it comes to taking vaccines, particularly newer ones that maybe haven't gone through the ropes as much as normal vaccinations would, ones that are on a new vaccine platform that's never been used en masse, like mRNA, you really got to weigh those costs to benefits. And when we started looking at this current vaccine that's rolling out for the virus, we went through the research and basically came to the conclusion that, well, if you're over the age of 70, the vaccine is a good idea. The Pfizer one, the Moderna one, the AstraZeneca one, the Johnson and Johnson one, the Novavax one, they all make sense if you're over 70. If you're under 70, it doesn't make so much sense. And for that reason, I will not be getting any of the vaccines. My wife isn't, my kid isn't, simply with the risks around COVID and the statistical risks for people below age 70. I would much rather take my chances with the virus, so to speak, rather than risk it on a medication that's not terribly well tested. And that's really what trips up people at the end of the day is the word vaccination kind of gets them confused. There's no such thing as a vaccination, or at least that's a specialty term. What it is it's a medication. And as with every medication, you always have to weigh the cost to benefits. And with COVID, we've known for quite a while, if you're below a certain age and you have an absence of certain medical conditions, well, it's really not all that risky to you. There's, of course, several other considerations around that. For example, let's say that you are a little bit under 70, but you have diabetes. Well, diabetes is an enormous risk factor for COVID symptoms, for getting severe symptoms. So if you're a little bit under 70 but have diabetes, the vaccine may still be for you. And I gotta say, there's been a certain amount of unpleasant, unsavory type of stuff that's been going on, specifically with the vaccines and the rollout of them. For example, in my area, there's the AstraZeneca vaccine, which you guys may have heard of. Was getting into trouble in certain countries for causing blood clots. It's the vaccine that has the lower efficacy rate versus some of the other ones. So the AstraZeneca vaccine is sort of the poor man's vaccine. And in my area, even though most people are getting the Pfizer or the Moderna, as it turns out, agricultural workers, factory workers, food processing workers, and other types of laborers who live in communal settings at camps are getting the AstraZeneca reserved for them, which I found interesting. It's like they're giving the lower wage people the less good option to vaccinate with. But there's certainly other things going on that kind of make you ask some questions. For example, I've noticed that a variety of different doctors who've come out with semi-reasonable, middle-of-the-road type of analyses, like the kind I just made in regards to vaccination, have often been censored. Certainly censored off YouTube, but I even mean they've been censured by various colleges of physicians, the ones that apply to them. And I've certainly seen many doctors and medical professionals over the past year make incredibly reasonable statements regarding the effectiveness of lockdowns and masks and all sorts of other measures or lack thereof of effectiveness. And their colleges of physicians would try to say, oh, this person is going against the opinion of the College of Physicians of their area. So don't feel like doctors can speak to you freely about vaccination because very clearly they can't. And even historically, when I've looked at the whole childhood immunization schedule, I never realized this, but a doctor can never ever get in trouble for recommending that you follow the immunization schedule in your jurisdiction as it's written, but they can get into trouble for telling you to deviate from it, which is very odd because from my research and my wife's research, it became very obvious there actually are various good reasons to deviate from the written immunization schedule. Specifically, the biggest deviation we made with our son's vaccination is we didn't do all of the vaccines at the prescribed times, particularly the ones that were prescribed before he was 2 years old and his immune system was fully formed. We just delayed several of the vaccines a little bit, even though ultimately he did end up getting most of them. And then there are those who point out the other strange logical fallacies, such as the fact that very little effort when it comes to COVID was spent exploring the current catalog of medications and which one of them may be good for stopping severe symptoms of COVID. And a whole lot of effort went into new and barely tested vaccinations as sort of the default answer, which was strange. And even then, there were like the good vaccines and the bad vaccines. Not a lot of people realize this, but Russia's Sputnik 5 vaccine was actually the very first vaccine that was developed and released and began manufacturing for COVID. It happened in August of 2020. It turned out to be just roughly as good as the Pfizer and Moderna one, but for months and months and months, there was no acceptance of it in the Western world, except with nations friendly to Russia. And now, slowly, more and more countries are signing contracts to buy the Sputnik 5, even though it was perfectly good all along. Yeah, they sort of rushed through the phase 3, didn't really do the phase 3, but hell, all of these vaccines have no long-term testing anyway, so I don't know to what degree that matters. But anyway, hopefully you're one of the people who actually has the ability to choose whether to get the vaccine. I know one lady who basically during COVID had booked some flights that ended up getting canceled, and all she has is credit for those flights. And this lady if she doesn't get vaccinated, she basically can't travel. Or at least there'll be many countries which she won't be able to travel to, at least temporarily or before her travel credits expire. So she's kind of being blackmailed into getting vaccinated, even though she really doesn't want to. So hopefully that's not your position and you actually get to choose. On that note, guys, that was my 2 cents on the vaccines. Hope it was useful to you. If so, subscribe, hit that like button, and we'll see you all next time.